I've got the key to a 2025 manual transmission Mazda 3. And a lot of people don't even know you can get the 3 with a manual. So today, let's find out what it's like to have this as a daily driver. We'll take a close look at this sporty, compact hatchback, drive it on some fun roads, and talk about it. All right, so honestly, I can't believe that Mazda is still offering the 3 with a manual, but here we are. So back in 1980, around 35% of new cars sold in the US had manual transmissions. Manual cars were cheaper, more fuel efficient, and offered better performance than automatics. Thanks to modern automatics and dual clutch transmissions, manuals no longer hold an edge in efficiency or speed. Today, less than 2% of new cars sold in the US are manuals, most of them being sports cars. And a recent study estimated that only like 18% of US drivers even know how to drive a manual. These days, with growing traffic and stop-and-go commutes, most people prefer the convenience of an automatic. So while manuals no longer offer any technical advantage over autos, there is still an emotional and experiential element to manuals that some drivers prefer. And maybe you're in that camp too, since you're watching this video. And it's fitting that Mazda, a company that seems to prioritize driving enjoyment, is still offering a manual in its entry-level compact car. And this might just be the last non-performance car you can buy in the US that still has a manual. Any way you slice it, this is a very niche car. So there are several trims in the Mazda 3 lineup for both the sedan and the hatch, and the manual is offered on this 2.5S premium trim on the hatchback only. The premium isn't the top level trim, but it's close, and it's about a $5,000 jump over the base hatchback. But you do get quite a few features for that money, which we'll talk about in a bit. This generation Mazda 3 was introduced way back in 2019, so the design isn't exactly new. But several years later, it still looks pretty fresh and a bit more upscale than other compact cars. It's got a nice blacked out grille, LED headlights, black 18-inch wheels with a simple design, dual exhaust with actual real exhaust tips, and a rear wiper, which is nice. In terms of paint, we have the somewhat boring and drab dark gray color here, but keep in mind that the paint colors are a bit more limited if you opt for the manual. Want this 3 in blue with a manual? Sorry, not an option. So in terms of the design, my only real complaint is with this gigantic C-pillar. I'm a fan of how it ties everything together on the outside, but on the inside, that C-pillar creates a rather significant blind spot. These side windows are also pretty tiny, some of the smallest I've seen in a compact car, and the car has a rather high belt line, which even for me at 6'3", makes the interior feel a bit cave-like. Outward visibility isn't the best. Interior space certainly isn't class-leading either. Felt like I had a lot more space in the Civic and the WRX that I recently tested. But it's still certainly doable for someone my height, assuming that I don't have anybody sitting right behind me. Legroom is pretty good. There's a lot of space from side to side. That's not a problem. And even headroom's okay with this small sunroof. And you might be willing to overlook those smaller interior dimensions because this cabin is just so nice. This was introduced for the 2019 model year, and not really much in here has changed since then because it hasn't really needed to. It's a really upscale looking design with lots of soft touch materials. It definitely feels a step above over others in this segment. We've got these nice leather seats here in this red color, and they're pretty comfortable. Power adjustable on the driver's side, but manual only on the passenger side. They are also both heated. This premium also has the Bose stereo system, which sounds pretty good. And behind this very nice looking and feeling steering wheel is the gauge cluster. On the left and right, we have actual analog gauges. In the middle, it's a digital gauge that is configurable. A couple different modes here to display. Now moving on to the infotainment system. Now, if you're familiar with Mazdas, you probably know that this is not a touchscreen. You have to control everything down here with this rotary dial. No touch available. And that's why the screen is set so far back. Mazda really doesn't want you touching the screen. They feel that this rotary dial is actually a safer way to interact with the infotainment. And while it does take some time to get used to it and kind of get a muscle memory for it, I actually agree with them. I kind of prefer this over a touchscreen. The screen isn't gigantic and the graphics do feel a little bit dated, but it still works. I don't really have any issues with this system. It's responsive. And you also do get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is nice. All right, let's take a look to see what this backup camera looks like. Yeah, that looks decent. It's not a giant portion of your screen showing the camera, but the resolution is okay. No 360 view on this trim though. You can get that on the turbo model. Now, if you've watched any of my other car reviews, you'll know that this is my favorite type of climate control system because I don't have to interact with any screens. I've got physical controls for the temperature here on the left and the right, simple buttons to select the location and the fan speed, physical buttons for the heated seats, and I can pretty much operate this without taking my eyes off the road, which I believe is the correct way to implement a climate control system in a car. All right, down here on this center console, wireless charger, a couple cup holders, our fine manual transmission that we got right here, volume knob here, and here's where your rotary dial is for the infotainment. Got this nice sliding top to our center console, which is a nice feature. It's a decent size center console for a compact car. That's where your USB ports are. All right, let's take a look at the back seat. And I'm not really looking forward to this because it's tiny. I'll just get that out of the way right now. All right, so as you can see with my seat set for myself at 6'3", I don't really fit back here. I can kind of squeeze my knees in here and I could probably take a short jaunt to like the supermarket or something, but yeah, this would not work for a long trip. My head hits the ceiling, my knees are crammed against the seat. Yeah, this is not a large car. This is really more of a driver-centric experience. Even if you had a kid with a booster seat back here, you'd still have to move this front seat up to allow their legs to even fit. Now, this car's been out since 2019. I think a lot of people know that there's not a lot of space back here. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just reminding you that, yeah, this is not a big back seat. Also, one more bummer, in the 6 years this car has been out, still no USB ports back here, still no vents. But the materials back here are very nice. The door panels look really good. The experience in the back seat in terms of how it looks is almost as good as it is in the front. So in terms of cargo space, we got 20.1 cubic feet of space with the seats folded up, 47.1 when the seats are down, which is acceptable. All right, let's get out of here and go for a drive. All right, so the Mazda 3 is no longer available with the 2-liter engine here in the States. The high-end turbo model gets a powerful 250 horsepower Turbo 4, but most trims like this one get the naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, making 191 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. And here in the States, this 2.5S premium trim hatchback is the only Mazda 3 you can get with this 6-speed manual. If you want the sedan with a manual, sorry, no can do. If you want all-wheel drive with a manual, also no. If you want the high horsepower turbo engine with a manual, again, the answer is no. Oh well, I guess we should just be happy that a manual is available at all, right? And the 6-speed manual in this car is pretty nice. The clutch is very light. It feels a bit springy. The shifts feel good without being overly notchy like a WRX, but the gearbox certainly isn't quite as nice as what you'd find in a Miata. But it's decent. I do feel like the throws feel a touch long for it to feel all that sporty, but it's really nice to be able to row your own gears. Now in terms of speed, 0 to 60 miles per hour occurs in about 7 seconds. And with the blistering acceleration of many EVs nowadays, 7 seconds doesn't seem all that impressive anymore. But there are many new cars that offer levels of acceleration that are borderline unusable on public roads. In my opinion, 7 seconds is plenty fast enough to be fun, and you'll have no problem getting up to speed on the freeway or passing other cars. And the nice thing about this being naturally aspirated is there's no turbo lag, but you do kind of have to wring it out. Most of the power is made in the higher RPMs. You'll notice that there are no driving modes here. You, the driver, are the driving modes. If you want to be in eco mode, just short shift and try to maximize your fuel economy. If you want to be in sport mode, just press that accelerator pedal harder and leave it in gear longer. It's pretty simple. Don't need any fancy technology for that. But yeah, on this uphill right here, trying to lug my way out of that corner, yeah, you don't really have a whole lot of power until you get up until about 5,000–6,000 RPM. There we go. Now, if you've ever driven a modern Mazda, you're likely aware that Mazda actually cares about driving enjoyment, even on an entry-level car like this 3. Okay, no, they didn't give it fully independent suspension. We've got a torsion beam in the rear, but even so, handling with this car is pretty good. Pushing it on a winding road like this one can be a lot of fun. And without a ton of power on tap, it does really provide that sort of slow car fast type of experience that I love so much. You can still have fun even with the limits of the law and not go careening off of the edge of a cliff, as you can see someone did right there. Lots of crashes on this road. Don't be dummies while you're driving on canyon roads, people. So this Mazda 3 has almost as much horsepower and nearly as much torque as the highly enjoyable Honda Civic Si, and it's only a few tenths of a second slower to 60 than the Si. Is Mazda selling a sport compact car that competes with the Civic Si and they just forgot to tell everybody? Is this actually a hot hatch that nobody knows about? Well, not really. Yeah, it's only a tiny bit slower in a straight line than the Civic Si, but this wasn't really designed to compete with it. If you really start to push it in the corners, you can feel that these tires really aren't up to the task. They're okay, but definitely not as good as a true performance tire. And the other thing is that the Civic Si has a limited slip differential, which helps minimize front wheel slippage and allows for quicker acceleration around these tight corners. And we just have an open diff here, and in these really tight corners, it's pretty noticeable. So while this is a lot of fun to drive, in terms of performance, it's not quite on par with an Si, so not exactly a direct competitor. I think you might go for this over an Si if you wanted that elevated driving engagement, but you also wanted a slightly more upscale interior. I think that's kind of the main advantage here. So in terms of ride, it's on the firm side, but it's not too harsh. It doesn't quite have the serene ride like a luxury car. It can get a bit bouncy on choppy roads like this one. And when it comes to fuel economy, it's not bad. 26 miles per gallon city, 36 highway, and 30 combined. And surprisingly, not that much different than the automatic, just slightly worse city mileage and slightly better highway mileage than the auto. But if you did compare it to some other cars in the class, you'll realize that it's not class leading. A base Civic or Kia Forte can do better. And other compacts like the Civic and Corolla offer hybrids, but that's not an option here with this Mazda. All right, so let's talk about the price of this thing. The base model Mazda 3 sedan starts at just over $25K after destination charge, which is pretty reasonable given the average price of most new cars. This 2.5S premium hatchback with a manual comes in at just under 33 grand. So on paper, it's not super competitive. Fuel economy is a bit lower than some, interior space is a bit tighter, and this car is not the quickest, but it gives you three things that other cars are often missing from the compact car world: an upscale interior, a fun driving experience, and added engagement with the 6-speed manual. Even though this thing isn't a performance king, the 3 is still one of my favorite small cars to drive, and the manual just adds to that experience. And this car does feel a bit more expensive than it is, even at lower trim levels. Though I do have to wonder, why didn't Mazda just pair a manual with the 250 horsepower all-wheel drive turbo model? I think enthusiasts would have totally eaten that up. I really liked that car when I tested it a few years back, but its short-shifting automatic transmission was easily the weak link. Anyway, I've really enjoyed my time with this manual Mazda 3, and it's also nice to just not have yet another crossover in my driveway to review. In my opinion, smaller cars are just inherently more fun to drive, and in a time when some manufacturers are shifting away from compact cars to more profitable SUVs, I appreciate that Mazda still provides a very compelling entry into this market. And it has a manual. I think if you're into manuals, we should all be thankful that Mazda is still providing a fun to drive compact car with a manual. All right, that's gonna be it for today. If you like this video and you wanna see more like it, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. If you'd like to help support the channel, please buy a Hello Road t-shirt or hat at helloroad.tv/shop. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.